Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to another edition of Ask Dr. Danzinger with world renowned diabetes reversal expert Dr. Michael Danzinger with Diabetes Reversal Partners. He is actually licensed in many states, including New York. Now, you New York, excited about that. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Virginia, Minnesota, and Florida. So if you have Medicare and Medicare Advantage PPO plans, he can be your own personal coach to help you reverse your type 2 diabetes. We've had several people in our network with the Global PAD Association that have worked with him, and they're seeing remarkable results. And what's great about him is that he believes that all different diets can work. It's just a matter of finding the diet that works for you that you are going to stick with. And that's really key. So make sure to check out diabetesreversalpartners.com and you can find out more about his practice and see if he can help you out. Today, we're talking about artificial sweeteners versus sugar, and it's a really big topic right now. This is not a political discussion. I don't care where you fall in terms of your politics. I'm looking at the movement right now, which is the Make America Healthy Again movement with Robert F. RFK. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., with him at the helm as the health secretary. He really wants to remove all artificial sweeteners, colors, all of the above, processed foods. He wants to make things more natural and more wholesome. And I know that's music to the ears of Dr. Danzinger because it's something we talk about all the time. But with artificial sweeteners, you have Coca-Cola. They just came out and said, hey, we are going to now have a real sugar version versus high fructose corn syrup version of their Coca-Cola, much like what's in Mexico as well. I still have a feeling, Dr. Danzinger, so many patients are still going to think that drinking the Diet Coke with more artificial sweeteners are healthier than having the real cane sugar in the real Coca-Cola versus the high fructose corn sugar. I don't know. I don't even know if any of this makes sense. There's so much to take in.
Great intro, Kim. Thanks for the opportunity to have this conversation. I'm hoping to take questions from the audience today. But I think a good starting point for the conversation is that there's a lot of mixed feelings about artificial sweeteners, also known as non-nutritive sweeteners. So these are basically calorie-free sweeteners like saccharin and aspartame and sucralose and stevia and others. So I would say that these occupy sort of a middle ground, and there's a lot of mixed feelings about that. So I think they're not as bad as sugar, but they're not completely benign. So that's a good starting point for our conversation.
What's wrong with regular sugar? And why isn't Coke healthy if they're switching from high fructose corn syrup to real sugar?
So sugar sweetened beverages are a major problem for the health of the United States. I think most middle school kids could tell you that. And, I think everyone could recognize that water is a healthier beverage than soda. But what is it exactly about the sugar that's in soda that's such a problem? So it raises blood sugar in people with diabetes. It raises heart disease risk. It raises all sorts of metabolic problems that are related to obesity. And so sugar is a major in our diet, is a major source of calories, and it fuels hunger and appetite. And so there's a lot of research showing that sugar is one of the drivers of the metabolic problems in the United States. Heart disease, the leading killer of men and women, high blood pressure, stroke risk, all cancers, all the bad chronic diseases are associated either directly or indirectly with sugar and artificial sweetener or uh, sugar sweetened beverages accounts for about half of the sugar in the American diet.
And it's not about just the sugar, it's the amount of sugar. And sugar is hidden in so many different things. I know we've talked about it before. You don't even realize that in some iodized salt, there's dextrose, it's sugar. There are all kinds of different names for sugar that you may not realize. I'm not sure if you can go through some of those um, to help people be aware that when they're checking the ingredients label, to look out for some of those little sneaky names, including the high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, Americans on average consume about 130 pounds of sugar per year in a wide variety of forms. And so that comes averages about 30 teaspoons per day of sugar on average. Some people have three times that much, and some people have a third of that much. But on average, it's coming in the form of high fructose corn syrup, or there's maybe about 10 different ways that ingredient labels, talk about different forms of sugar, and they're all fairly similar once they get into your body. They're um, a glucose molecule linked to a fructose molecule in a 50-50 combination. And so whether it's coming from honey or jam or high fructose corn syrup or sugar cane or sugar beet or, you know, it's sugar, 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 sugar everywhere, every day in many different forms. And the key is, are you eating processed foods that come in packages and jars and et cetera? Or are you eating fruits and vegetables and healthy protein, things that have one ingredient versus things that have 10 ingredients? That's the key difference.
It's so interesting you say that because just the other day I was in the freezer section thinking I was going to just pick up some French fries, just the sweet potato fries. Every once in a while, I like to have a few sweet potato fries, and I bake them in the oven. And I noticed there was sugar in one of the ingredients. I couldn't believe it. I was thinking I was doing something good and picking it up. And I was like, no, I'm putting that back. I don't want additional sugar. I'd rather cut my own sweet potato, get
Yeah.
one of those little French fry mandolins, make my own French fries and stick them in the oven versus
In fact,
buying.
some brands of sweet potato fries are potatoes, white potatoes that are just sweetened, and they're called sweet potato fries.
What?
Just one of hundreds of
Okay.
examples of how the food industry is sneaking sugar into all sorts of things because sugar sells. It's natural for us to want to buy and consume foods with sweetness to them. And so it's in ice cream, it's in all sorts of, sweet and savory things. It's in the breads and the crackers. It's in so many places.
And I love that we have Douglas joining us in studio. If you ever want to be in studio, make sure to email info, INFO, padhelp.org, and you can be in studio to ask Dr. Danzinger your questions yourselves. On Monday, we allow a limited number inside the studio. So always email us and we can send you a personal invite to join us. You can also write your questions on YouTube or on Facebook, across Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever you're joining us today. But go ahead, Douglas. Go ahead and unmute and ask Dr. Dansinger the questions you have. I know you have several.
And y'all, I think y'all kind of answered because first of all, I keep thinking every time you sit out at a restaurant at a table and you order tea, it's either sweet or unsweet. If it's unsweet, you look at that little box, they have 6, 7 different type of sweeteners in it. And the other question was, yes, food, because I love sweet potatoes. So, I mean, and how are you supposed to cook certain foods you cook with sugar? Some, you know what I mean? So how do you adjust that part about it?
Okay, great questions. Thanks for asking those. So, yes, the when it comes to foods that have natural sugars in them, like sweet potato, for example, we're not even worried about those right now in our conversation about sugar. And so I will acknowledge, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, apples and other fruits have sweet, sugar, fruit sugar in there. That's not even what we're talking about today. And we're talking about what's added to foods by the food industry. So we've all seen the packets of sugar substitutes on the
Yeah.
tables, right? You've got the pink packet, which is saccharin, and the blue packet, which is um, like
Equal.
the NutraSweet, and so that's aspartame. And then the yellow packet is sucralose, also known as Splenda. There might be the green packet, which is stevia or truvia, and you might even find some other ones. So, how bad are these packets? How bad is a diet soda compared to a regular soda? And
Yes, please.
I would say if you look at the big picture and compare it to sugar, it's a middle ground. And so I think the evidence points to these packets as being almost safe, but not 100% safe. And so if sugar is 100% bad, then these sweeteners, I would say, are 20% bad. So, not nearly as bad as sugar, but not completely off the hook when it comes to what research studies show. So, research studies show that sugar fuels all of these diseases, starting with dental cavities. But it fuels heart disease and diabetes and um,
Alzheimer's, we discovered.
Alzheimer's. Yeah, sugar fuels everything. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. So,
So the question, I guess, so I order unsweet tea or
yes.
I make unsweet tea. And if I add two packages, it's not sweet enough. So if I add two more, am I going wrong direction then, right?
So, are you adding sugar packets or are you adding like
Well, a couple of years
artificial
ago, we
sweetener
heard that
packets?
some of those, I remember, I think it was Asperger. I don't remember which one, but they said it's bad for you and they wanted to take them off the tables and
Yeah.
stuff. So that's kind of for those of us that like tea,
Yes.
sweet tea, preferably sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's like, where can I draw the line in how sweet do I make it and make it healthy for me,
Yeah.
but have that little extra taste that I like?
So, yes, if you want your tea sweetened, then the artificial sweeteners or the non-nutritive sweeteners, I think, are better than the sugar. So, the best one is stevia or truvia. So you might see that in the green packet. You can add a couple of those, and a lot of people want to do that because they want a little sweetness in there, including me. I like the taste of sweetness, and I don't want all that sugar in my tea, but I don't want to just drink it completely unsweetened because I would prefer to put a couple of stevia packets in there, or even the yellow Splenda packets. So I'll admit I have Splenda, and because I enjoy it. So is it 100% safe? We don't know for sure. So to pull it off the market, in my opinion, would be extremist. There's not enough research to show that these non-nutritive sweeteners are a major problem. I think they're a
Except if
very
they're used in high quantities, but you
yeah,
aren't using them. everything in moderation. If you're putting a couple of sugar packets into your coffee in the morning or into a glass of iced tea, but if you're drinking a gallon of iced tea with about 10 packets, probably
Yeah,
not the best
that's a good point.
idea,
That's
right?
a good
It's
point.
just a little bit, but even then, you had mentioned in a previous episode on artificial sweeteners that you even prefer the natural drops of stevia versus even the processed packets. So the natural stevia in liquid form. It
Yes.
comes in a little dropper.
Yeah, I stand by that. And so some people just don't like the aftertaste, or the drops that aren't necessarily widely available, but you can have them at home and use them. I was looking into how much artificial sweetener do Americans consume compared to sugar. And so I had said the average amount of sugar consumption per day in all different forms is equal to about 30 teaspoons. And the amount of artificial or non-nutritive sweeteners people are consuming in the United States averages about the equivalent of 1 teaspoon versus 30 teaspoons of sugar. It's about 3% of our sweetness is coming from artificial sweeteners rather than sugar. So, of the sweetness that Americans experience, about 97% of that is coming from different forms of sugar, and just a small fraction, less than 5% of the sweetness on average is coming from the non-nutritive sweeteners. But for some individuals, they're drinking a lot of diet soda, or they're consuming a lot of artificial sweeteners. And there's evidence to show that that could fuel insulin resistance, or disrupted satiety, or disrupted um, sense of sweetness. Sweet calibrate, it dulls your sweetness, so that you have to eat a lot of sugar in order to enjoy sweetness, right? The taste of natural sugars in fruits is dulled by this. It can disrupt the microbiome potentially. So intestinal bacteria are probably adversely affected by artificial sweeteners. And so the effects seem to be there, although again, compared to when we're using it, it's almost always to try to eat less sugar. And so it's it's the better trade-off between the sugar. Water's the best, of course.
There's one, water is definitely the best. And there's one sugar, though, artificial sweetener that you have, or alternative, I should say, that you have warned us about, and it's monk fruit because it is laced with xylitol, which is not one of your favorites.
Yeah, erythritol. So when you buy
Erythritol, that's what it
yeah,
is.
so when you buy monk fruit sweetener, it's mixed in with erythritol, and erythritol does seem to increase the risk of blood clotting. And again, it's a minor effect, and they haven't banned erythritol, but people who, nutritionists who used to be enthusiastic about it as a calorie-free source of sweetness that doesn't raise blood sugar, have lost some of their enthusiasm, because some of the research has, showed that it's not completely safe. And so I would put erythritol in the camp with all other types of sweetener, non-nutritive sweeteners, and say it's not completely safe. The safest one is probably stevia.
That's good to know. And one of the questions that's coming in right now is just about naturally infused vinegars, because this viewer actually says, and it's anonymous, so I can't quite tell. It's like 124 something. Anyway, they want to know if naturally infused with fruit vinegars, because she uses them on her peaches and she air fries them, if that is okay as an alternative to using sugar. And she used to use brown sugar on her peaches to when she cooked them.
Yeah, I like that idea. So there might be some natural sugar in that vinegar, and no complaint with that. I like that as an alternative to the brown sugar.
What about coconut sugar? That's another one coming
Yeah.
in.
Well, coconut sugar is for the most part like other forms of sugar, and it sounds healthier than it probably is. Again, in moderation, so small amounts. A palm, coconut sugar is not identical to palm sugar, but they all are related. And palm sugar is, not a fairly common ingredient in foods, and it's like other kinds of sugars. Your body can't really tell the difference, and so coconut sugar it it's sugar, 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 sugar.
And that's just trouble. It's better to train your taste buds into, I mean, for the most part, I used to go to get a latte every single day. I would get the 4 pumps, start out with the 4 pumps of vanilla with pure sugar, and then I went to the sugar free, which was it was even worse using, their artificial sugars that they use in a lot of these processed products. It's not like using natural stevia that you're talking about. It's whatever chemical comes to mind that they're using inside those big bottles of vanilla. And now I've trained myself, I've gotten used to actually drinking plain coffee, and I get a better quality coffee and I can drink more of it. And it's not sweet. I enjoy the richer flavor of the coffee versus needing it to be sweet. And I find it has a little bit of a natural sweetness that I've gotten accustomed to.
Good for you, Kim. I like that. And so,
You
yes,
don't understand how many lattes. I was part of the Starbucks Gold Club. I was a
yeah,
proud Gold Club member.
right.
That's
So
how many lattes I was drinking.
I think it's an important point is, every time we make an effort to reduce our sugar, it's a step in the right direction. And fruit is not the main culprit, right? It's cookies and cakes and crackers and breads and candy and both subtle and obvious things, but um every time you use the artificial sweetener, let it be a reminder that you're doing it because you're making an effort to reduce your sugar, but you're not off the hook. You need to think about where's all the other sugar in my diet truly coming from and make an effort to figure out where that is, sleuth it out. Is it in the ketchup? Is it in the, canned tomatoes? Is it in the barbecue sauce? Is it in the yogurt? Is it in, this dessert I'd want to have? It's everywhere. Sleuth it out. And the problem in this country is not really the artificial sweeteners, as even though they're not completely off the hook. I keep coming back to every time you're using it to decrease your sugar intake is probably the right move.
Yeah. And it's really about, I mean, you have to read the labels. Better to shop the perimeter of the stores as much as possible, getting the natural ingredients, the one ingredient, right? Um, Foods. But even the Mayo Clinic, I was just reading that they say that artificial sweeteners, they're a short-term way to help some people lessen their use of sugar and or lose or manage weight and balance their glucose levels. It's not to be a long-term solution to just say, you know what, keep doing what you're doing, and encourage you to add these sweeteners to everything, make everything sweet. It's about training your taste buds
Yes.
into using less and less sweeteners altogether.
A really important point. The long-term solution is get used to drinking water instead of diet soda. Get used to having water instead of juice. Take your coffee black if you can, or wean yourself off over the long term. It's get used to the sweetness of vegetables. If you're eating a lot of sugar, then carrots and broccoli don't seem to have much sweetness to it. But if you train your taste buds and dial the sugar way down, the natural sweetness of vegetables really starts to pop.
Yeah, I'm actually living proof of that. But what about agave? That was another question just coming in last second here. It says it's lower glycemic.
Agave, yeah. So some people buy or consume agave, right? It comes from the agave plant, and it's for vegans. It might be a good alternative to honey, but metabolically, it's no better than any other kind of sugar. In fact, some people might even say it's worse because it's, although it doesn't spike your blood sugar direct as severely as, a tablespoon of agave might not spike your blood sugar as severely as a tablespoon of high fructose corn syrup, but there's more fructose in agave, and that's bad for your liver. Your liver hates when you're eating fructose outside of, just fruit. And so agave, it's all right, but it sounds like a better solution than it truly is.
Even maple syrup.
Saying sugar, 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 sugar. So maple syrup, is it better than artificial sweetened? Is it better than, commercially prepared syrup? Maybe, but not that much. It's mainly sugar. Honey, what about honey? So honey is it's natural, but it's still sugar. And so if you use a small amount as a condiment.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we end this episode? This has been a really enlightening episode. I love this conversation. We could have this one over and over and over again. I think it's so important.
I guess my final thought is this, about 20 years in 2006, I had similar interviews and conversations, where I wrote about artificial sweeteners. And I said 20 years ago, no one would be surprised if 20 years from now we found out that artificial sweeteners are worse than we thought. And here it is, I'm looking back, and 20 years later, we're seeing weak signals backed up by science that's saying these artificial sweeteners are not entirely benign, but the signal, the research about sugar is even worse than I would have expected from 20 years ago. And so artificial sweeteners, they have a place. They can help people in the long term. They're not so great, but if you're using them to help you cut down your sugar, there's definitely a role for that. Kim, do you have final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone who's listening, make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channels. We're live, we're simulcasting on 2 different channels. Don't forget to subscribe to Dr. Danzinger's channels for incredible content such as this, youtube.com/the little @ sign, and it's Michael Danzinger, MD. So make sure you subscribe to his channel, subscribe to our channel as well, youtube.com/the @ the way to my heart, and visit his website at diabetesreversalpartners.com. And he is available again for Medicare and Medicare Advantage PPO plans in New York, in Minnesota, in Virginia, in New Hampshire, in Massachusetts, in Florida. And we're hoping, I'm crossing my fingers for Ohio very soon. And I know Douglas on here is crossing his fingers for Texas at some point. But we're hoping to have you spread all the way across the nation and have your services for diabetes reversal available to everyone. Thank you for all you do, Dr. Danzinger. We really appreciate you.